Hello, my name is Gabriel. Last time we left off after we have concluded which are our requirements for our website. Now, in this episode, we'll be using an LLM to create a database structure based on these requirements to see how easy it is. The end goal is to generate enough data to simulate this part. So to have 200 rooms in a database-like structure, where we have 1 to 6 guests per room, each with special preferences, and then use an LLM to query this information and see what we need to do in order to obtain 8 concurrent users. So in preparation for the prompt, we will say that we are not interested in hosting multiple hotels in our software. We can expand this further later if we so desire. This would be an initial prompt, and let's see what is the outcome. Good, so we already have a simple schema. Let's see if the LLM has introduced any suggestions. Room ID, room name. Now the guest, there should be a guest ID first, okay. And then there is an association between a guest and a room in the form of a reservation. Okay. Now let's improve this prompt to include some of our constraints. So one of the constraints was that there are special guests and we should have some rooms reserved for on-site reservations. We have described in plain English. Special guest can be associated to a room, but it is not necessarily forced to be handled as a reservation. It should not be synchronized with the outside systems. And some of the rooms can be reserved only for hotel reservation. It has introduced something called a loud booking channel, which can be on-site, any, and advanced only. This name we don't like, we will rename it. And the guests, if it's a special guest, so guests can have a flag. I think it means that, let's see, if special guests were if special guests later need unique attributes, VIP, contact persons. So it assumed that the guest is special, not the room will be reserved. So our prompt is not good. I think the misleading part is this one, because it is called a guest and it has a connection with the name guest there, and the room can host a reservation or a special guest. It made the assumption that the guest is the one who is special. It did not assume that we want the room to be special. At the end of the day, its proposal was not wrong. I would just like to change from the advanced only into. We have tried to explain why we need that special guest. Yeah, staff assignment can work. Good. And now, having all these, we have a choice. We can impose a database that we really like. We can use the easiest one or the lightest one, which is SQLite, or we can drive the conversation and ask the LLM which database it is recommended. Since the purpose of this project is to see how we can use LLMs to write as little application logic as possible and to have as much customization as possible, the decision of the database is not something that important. In a different situation for a different type of application, that decision is really important. We should take into account things like caching, locking, what happens when we insert some data, a speed, memory footprint, backups, redundancy, but in our case, none of those apply. So we will just ask it to export. Now let's improve the prompt and add the special preferences as well. As usual with LLMs, we get extra pieces of code that tries to do cleanup or error management that we did not ask for. Now that we have received our piece of code, we can take it and go to a code editor. It can also work with simpler programs, but it is better in a code editor, and we can create a new file. We can use the same recommendations given by the LLM, because if we do so, the next commands will be easier. So we can just create a file, and then we can copy the content, put it, save it. And now I do have errors because I do not have Python installed on my computer. I have installed Python locally, and now we can see the difference between a chat interface, such as this one, and a code editor. The code editor has some parts inside that check different things, and it can give us more clear errors. In order to interact with the code in a very easy way, instead of copy pasting every time back and forth between the code editor and the web browser, I am using an extension called Klein. It is free. You do have to create an account on their website in order to have access to it. But then the usage itself, it is free, and you can bring your own models. We interact directly with the code base. Since Visual Studio Code comes with a tight integration with ChatGPT, if we use the fix option, it will always try to fix it with ChatGPT instead of our own model. So what we have to do is we have to specify that we want it fixed with Klein. We can go through each of the errors and have it fixed for us. Do note that this will result in a lot of extra code generated that we might not understand. So don't use these as your normal coding practice. It is okay here because the purpose of the project is not to have a clean architecture. It is to play with LLMs, but it is not the way that you should do coding. Now all our errors are fixed. Now we will use another magic thing in Python called UV. If you have UV installed, you can go with UV VM, and it will create a virtual environment for you. And then UV can run a script for you. So we want to run it like this. And let's pass along the error. The client has run the command for us. Good. Now we have our database. Okay. I have installed an extension, and in my case, here I have an SQL Explorer button where we can see the tables. So here are tables: a guest table, a reservation, and a rooms table. So now we have a database in which we can store our test data. We have the structure, we have the special guests, and we have our on-site reservations. Now, theoretically, every guest can be part of a reservation and can belong to a room. We can have guests that are pure tourists. We can have tourists that come at our hotel without using a booking website. And we can have rooms for our employees. Next step is to populate this database with sufficient data to simulate the load as if our hotel would be successful. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.